Okay,
All right.
we are here to talk about open education as social justice. I'm Althea Lazaro. I'm the librarian for English and the Wood Technology Center.
And I'm Dave Ellenwood. I'm the librarian for social sciences and business.
So we've got a definition of open education as social justice. Up on the screen, it says open education is socially just when it works to alleviate financial injustice for our students, opens our pedagogy to a greater diversity of voices and experiences, and asks us to question how to make the educational experience truly open and accessible to all students.
I love that definition.
We wrote it.
Yeah. It's a great definition. We did good work. I think, though, as I've gotten more into open education, the movement, and all of the expressions of this movement, it feels a little more complicated than our definition. There's some tensions that are important. I think it would be cool if we were to talk through some of those tensions together, get into some of the debates, things like how do faculty get compensated for their work within this? Are we for sort of for-profit OER options? Are we against them? How do we want to think about representation of marginalized voices in OER? So let's get into some of those questions. I think that will be fun.
I'm down,
Okay.
but why don't we talk for a minute about what students' financial realities are, and then let's get into the complicated stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay. So we have a slide here that's going to help us think through what students are currently experiencing with the cost of textbooks. At the moment, most students are spending approximately 8% of their overall budget on course materials. And that's not just education budget, that's like whole life budget. That's coming out of rent, grocery money, also tuition money. And the State Board of Community and Technical Colleges surveyed students in Washington State and asked what they thought of as an affordable textbook. And they said $50 per course was what they could afford. Meanwhile, at our college bookstore, our most expensive textbook is $350. So this is all just to say that textbook prices are not neutral. They affect different students in different ways, and when our textbooks are as expensive as they are, that means that students who can't afford them are either taking money out of necessities like food and rent, or they don't have they don't buy the textbook because they can't afford it, and then they don't have the materials they need to be successful in classes. There was some research done on what the relationship was between open educational resources and student success. And of 17,000 students they included in the study at multiple institutions, they compared students in OER courses, so students in courses with OER materials where the cost of the material was low or free, and students in courses with kind of traditional textbooks, same courses, different materials. And the students in the OER courses got the same or higher grades. They were more likely to complete the courses, and this was kind of interesting and unexpected. Students enrolled in higher credits the following term after being in a class with OER texts. The author's explanation for this was that because students were starting the quarter with their full textbooks, because they weren't waiting to get it from Amazon for really cheap or going without it for a couple of weeks until financial aid went through, they were able to stay up on the material in the courses from the beginning. They never got behind. And they had everything they needed to succeed. And also that they had money left for tuition the following quarter, and they were able to, and therefore able to afford to enroll in more credits. Plus they passed their classes. So I think that can make, what that says to us is that it can really make a big difference for student success when we make these OER transitions. Locally, Tacoma Community College has made a big push on including OER materials in their courses. And the students enrolled in courses with OER materials were 40% of the overall student population, but they accounted for 47% of the SIA completion points that were earned by the college. I don't know what that actually means, but our dean says that that's really important. SIA
I think it's like
completion
Student
points.
Achievement Initiative.
Yes.
But, beyond that, that's as
That
far
sounds
as
right. I think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's a big
Yeah.
deal. Go to the next. And just to think about what we can do as a college for students at Tacoma, where they've been working on this since 2012, you can see the numbers up on the screen about how much yearly students are saving. And in 2016-17, that was over $1 million just that year that they saved students in textbook costs. And I am proud to say that here at Seattle Central, we did our first year of OER course conversion grants. And in that 1 year, we gave out $10,000 worth of grant money. And we were able to save students $53,000 this coming year. That's a rough estimate.
That's amazing.
It's a big deal.
That's really cool.
Makes me feel proud.
Yeah. So I'm so convinced by this argument. Like, we are really benefiting students by increasing our OER capacity here at Central, making it easier for them to afford college, also making them more successful. So I'm totally convinced. I think one thing that we want to think about a little bit further, though, is the faculty labor that goes into making student success and student affordability more possible. So if you've ever experienced converting a class to OER, you'll know that it takes a lot of time to do the conversion, and we don't want to make that labor invisible. So there was a major report that came out called the Lowell Report recently, and that is librarians as open education leaders. And it showed that there's an average of 81.76 hours of librarian and faculty time per conversion project. Yeah, so all those points are really well taken. I'm super convinced by that. Like, it's definitely a net positive for students. It increases their ability to pay for other things in their life, reduces their costs, and also is increasing their success at our college. So what a great thing. I think the other difficulty here, the other complication, is the amount of work that this takes for faculty. So if you've ever gone through a conversion process, which I know you have, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, and there's a recent report that came out from it's called the Lowell Report. It's the Libraries as Open Education Leaders report, and that showed that each conversion took about 81.76 hours of librarian faculty time. So it's a lot of time. It's over and above the normal course prep time for creating these conversions to OER, right? So we got to think about that, right? We don't want to just be giving up our time. And this kind of brings to mind a quote that I heard recently from an OER advocate in BC, Canada, Rajiv Janjani, who said that we should resist the pitting of the ever-growing precarity of students against the ever-growing precarity of faculty. So we kind of saw the cost that students and the precarity of students, and we know that life is hard right now out there economically and in so many ways for students. But we also have to acknowledge that it's really difficult for faculty right now. And, so we can look to the recent AFT studies that they conducted showing that faculty compensation has really stagnated as regional costs of living have increased significantly. And many faculty have to work second or third jobs just to make ends meet. So we don't want to exacerbate that problem by putting another load of work that's unpaid on faculty. But because of this problem that faculty are having, this sort of pressure on their time, it makes the resources provided by for-profit major textbook companies really enticing because they package materials in a way that they're able to just kind of plug right into their class and reduce time. And these, for example, things like reading quizzes, exams, study guides, lesson plans, and other course materials connected to the book, right? And so those are just packaged really easily and you can plug them into the class. So So it's really reasonable or understandable that faculty might take that for-profit option. It's a lot of people don't know that there are some of those same materials connected to OER options. So if you do a little extra research and figure out which OER textbooks have like test banks and other course materials associated with them, you can have some of the same benefits that a for-profit textbook. They're probably not packaged in the same way that are as plug and play, but they still do have like test banks and things like that. There's another option is there's some OER companies who provide for a small fee OER textbooks with all of those same sort of
supplemental materials.
Yeah, and we can cut that. Let's cut that and say all those same supplemental materials, and just for a small fee.
Yeah, I don't love that. That sounds like a corporate takeover of a student and faculty led anti-capitalist movement.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, I think you're right, and I've been reading some stuff on this recently in the literature on political economy of communication and information, and those folks have shown over time that that capitalist markets of information in particular have a tendency towards concentration, monopoly, oligopoly, and these kinds of things. So let's look at a slide of these different kinds of markets and how they concentrate. So you can see here that the textbook market on the top is, I could circle it with this pen. This textbook market here, ooh. So the textbook publishing industry market is very concentrated. So you have McGraw-Hill at 17% of the market, Pearson at 32%, Cengage at 35%. Actually, Cengage and McGraw-Hill are planning. They're in the they're trying to merge currently. Right. So they're in the process of merging. So that's like going to be about 50% of the market, right?
Those guys drive me crazy.
Yeah, over 50% of the market if they merge. So, and then you have down here the U.S. media industry, and this kind of shows that there's 5 major companies that control the majority of the media industry, and then all these other sort of major players on the sides there, right? So concentration in media, and then over here we have some academic publishing, scholarly journal publishing, and you can see these lines on the
top.
How am I going to describe this? What are these graph lines? Mm-hmm. These graph lines are pause there for a second. Do a little silence, and then we'll say. So these graph lines on this graph show that, so for instance, in psychology, that's the top line. Over 70% of the journal articles in psychology are published by the top 3 journals, right? So concentration happens across all these different industries, and that causes problems in terms of the ideologies that are present in the different publications, the control over cost, and all sorts of issues like that.
So it seems to me like the best option for kind of sustainable course materials through OER is for faculty to make those choices and assemble those courses, the course materials themselves, so that they can ensure a lot of diversity of materials in there and not be subject to the kind of whims of a for-profit company. But we did, and we have some ways of paying for faculty to do that here at Seattle Central, but we just did a year of those projects and found that what we had to pay didn't necessarily cover all of the cost of that work and also of the upkeep of that material. You know, these for-profit companies, they can pay to do revisions every couple of years and update the material. when we make those materials ourselves, that's on us
Yep.
to do. And I've heard this argument that well, selecting a textbook is part of normal course prep, so why should that be compensated differently just because it's OER? But I think we can see that a faculty member will be paid the same amount if they choose a textbook from McGraw-Hill or if they spend 80 hours putting together their own textbook. And so that's like, for faculty who have multiple jobs, how are they going to make that choice to spend, 80 more hours doing that work if they're not being compensated for those hours? It makes a lot of sense why folks choose
Yep.
these textbooks, but then the cost comes down on students.
Yep.
I think that is what has been behind the library really pushing to form these grants. And so I do just want to take a moment and say the library offers OER conversion grants. The Curriculum Development Committee also at the district offers course revision grants for the upkeep of OER materials in courses. And also that still might not be enough.
Yep. And so we're balancing all of these decisions as we move forward with deciding whether or not we want to do OER conversions. Great. So the problem with going with a for-profit company producing OER for a small fee would be helping them develop power within the market for OER and then them jacking up the prices eventually, right?
It's a risk.
That's the risk. So we really want to be careful about that and be thoughtful as we move forward with which OER texts and course materials we choose. Mm-hmm. So even if we do decide to go with one of these prefab OER courses or just a general open textbook through like OpenStax or something like that, there's still the issue of representation. And it's one of our major goals as a college to make sure that marginalized voices are represented in the classroom through our materials and all sorts of ways into thinking about marginalization. So this is a problem across publishing. So we've got this slide here of the publishing industry overall, and it shows that, white men, heterosexual, able-bodied are the dominant authors. And so their voices and their perspectives are being represented more than other folks. So this is a really big problem in mainstream industry of publishing, and this also is very similar in academic publishing. Mm-hmm. It's very the representation is about the same, and then we have no reason to necessarily believe that things would change in OE texts, right? So how are we going to address that? That's a major issue.
Yeah, I think that if we really want to represent marginalized voices in our course materials, that means then even more time spent developing course materials that are highly inclusive and finding those and putting them together in a way that makes sense for students. There is one other aspect of open education that I think could contribute to opening up our classes to diverse and marginalized voices, and that's open pedagogy. So the notion of open pedagogy pushes us to think about access and openness in its broadest terms, from the kind of material accessibility of our course management systems and software to the openness of our assignments and giving students input and voice in the materials that they are working with. So that's kind of, practically speaking, that means making assignments that ask students to find texts themselves to include or write texts themselves for future students. And that is a way of getting to the really local level of what representation means for our student communities. And we have a couple of examples of that to talk about. I worked on a project with Joel Shaver and Caitlin McClanahan in Research Writing English 102. They had been using a textbook called The Craft of Research, which was awesome, but a little expensive. And Joel suspected that his students weren't reading all of the book, so we took the most important pieces out of that and we incorporated it with citations into the course materials that they were giving students for free. And then they wrote some really interesting assignments asking students to reflect on their writing processes after they finished each assignment in the form of advice to future students.
So cool.
It's really cool. So students were giving writing instruction to the students who would come after them, and at the same time doing this metacognitive work of thinking about their own process. And we know that kind of reflection is really important for students to kind of cement their learning. I think you had a really cool project too, right?
Yeah, so in the conversion grant that I worked on with Jaime Cardenas and Tracy Lai, we were working on History 136, early American history, and there's an issue with finding marginalized voices from those time periods in the textbooks, and that translates into the OER text as well. So even though we put a lot of time into finding an OE text that is progressive and has all these different voices in it, we wanted to get more. So the assignment that we created asked students to go out and find primary sources from marginalized groups across the early American history period, and then collect them so that future groups of students can have access to those in some sort of collection. So really cool ways of getting around some of these problems using this open education technique.
I like that too, because it resists the sort of homogenization of education that I think has been a trend for a long time. And I will say, while I think that's exciting, it's messy.
Yes.
And it demands a lot of students intellectually, so like this is another kind of possible incremental change to courses, because even though that kind of reflective work is really important for students, it's also really hard for them.
Yeah.
And so faculty are going to have to be dealing with all of the kind of creative chaos that comes out of that.
I mean, I think also the reflective work is hard for students, and it's empowering to produce something that's going to have a lasting effect.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of balance again, the tension of moving students into their own power and and also reinvigorating our curriculum.
And what it demands of faculty.
Yeah.
While
right?
that's happening. Yeah.
All that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we wanted to represent these tensions through our discussion of the evolving nature of the OER movement. We don't know where it's all going. We're trying to shape it with you all, and hopefully these discussions help us think through how we want to act within this movement.
So to recap, what we want to make sure people are taking away from open education social justice possibilities is that OER means a more affordable education for students. It means higher graduation and persistence rates for students, and it means the ability to pay other bills in their lives. OER also seems to mean more work for faculty, and we know that faculty are already underpaid for the work that they do. So there are some options to mitigate that amount of work, like the commercial OER companies, but like Dave talked about, there are some serious problems with them, like the possibility that they won't be so affordable for long, like the kind of non-representation of full perspectives of marginalized voices in the materials. So open pedagogy is the most radically open option that faculty can take, but it may not always be realistic quarter to quarter, and it may not all be possible at once. That might be an incremental process that faculty follow to get there eventually. And then lastly, there are some ways to pay faculty for their hard social justice work through OER. And that's library open education grants that we are hoping to keep offering, curriculum revision grants for the upkeep of OE material, and let's always keep in mind that if this is really an important priority for faculty and for administrators, since this contributes to persistence rates, that we can collectively agitate at the college and the state level for more resources to fund this kind of work. That's a long game, but let's play it.
Yeah, great recap.